The night, a canvas for our deepest fears, a stage for creatures that slither in the shadows, and none hold our gaze quite like the vampire. A chilling blend of horror and allure, of mortality and the promise of something beyond. The vampire myth didn't spring forth fully formed. This tale, like the creatures it speaks of, has roots that reach back centuries, burrowing deep into the soil of our oldest fears. Long before the silver screen there were whispers, tales told around flickering candlelight, passed down through generations. Eastern Europe, a land steeped in folklore, where ancient forests whispered secrets on the wind and shadows held their breath. It was here, in the heart of this mystical landscape, that the vampire myth first took root. Life in these parts was harsh, unforgiving. In the heart of Romania, whispered tales spoke of the strigoi. These were not simply corpses risen from the grave, they were demonic entities, malevolent spirits that inhabited the bodies of the recently deceased. The strigoi were trapped between worlds, driven by an insatiable hunger for the life force they could no longer claim as their own. While the strigoi haunted the folklore of Romania in the Slavic regions, a different name instilled fear: Nosferatu. The origins of the Nosferatu are shrouded in mystery. Some believe they were once humans, cursed for committing unspeakable acts. Others claimed they were demonic entities, drawn to the world of the living by a thirst for blood. From the mists of folklore and fear, we turn to history, to a man whose name would become synonymous with cruelty, whose deeds would echo through the ages. His name was Vlad the Impaler, or, more chillingly, Dracula. Born in 1431 in Transylvania, Vlad's early life was steeped in turmoil. Vlad's reign was anything but peaceful. He inherited a land torn apart by internal strife and threatened by external forces. To consolidate his power and quell dissent, Vlad resorted to methods that would become legendary for their brutality. His weapon of choice? Impalement. Vlad's reign of terror was ultimately short-lived. He was betrayed by his allies and killed in battle against the Ottomans in 1476. But while Vlad the Impaler may have met his end on the battlefield, his legend continued to grow. Stories of Vlad's brutality spread far and wide, carried by travelers and merchants along the trade routes of Europe. The year was 1897. Across Europe, the Industrial Revolution roared, ushering in an age of scientific advancement and societal change. Yet beneath the veneer of progress, ancient fears lingered. It was in this fertile ground that Bram Stoker's masterpiece took root. Stoker's Dracula wasn't merely a bloodthirsty monster. He was a complex character, a creature of immense power and intelligence, forever trapped between his humanity and his monstrous nature. Stoker's Count was a creature of sophistication and charm, able to move effortlessly among the aristocracy of Victorian London. He was a master manipulator, preying on the vulnerabilities of his victims. Was an instant success, captivating readers with its chilling tale of horror and suspense. The novel's popularity paved the way for countless adaptations, stage plays, and most significantly, films. In 1931, Bela Lugosi donned the cape and fangs of Count Dracula, forever etching the image of the aristocratic vampire into the public consciousness. The silver screen became a breeding ground for the vampire myth. For centuries, the fear of vampires wasn't just about being drained of lifeblood, it was about losing your soul. This primal fear led to the development of elaborate rituals and tools designed to combat these creatures of the night. At the forefront of any vampire hunter's arsenal was the trusty wooden stake. Holy water, blessed by a priest, was a potent weapon against the unholy. Section 2. Rituals of protection, warding off the night. Beyond the tools of direct confrontation, countless rituals and traditions evolved as a means of warding off vampires and protecting the living. These practices, passed down through generations, were deeply ingrained in everyday life, a constant reminder of the unseen forces that lurk just beyond the veil of the mundane. Garlic, with its pungent aroma and ancient association with warding off evil, was a staple in any vampire hunter's arsenal, but it was also a common household defense. Strings of garlic bulbs were hung over doorways and windows, their strong odor believed to repel vampires, their presence a visible reminder of the constant vigilance required to keep evil at bay. Mirrors, reflecting back the truth and disrupting illusions, were believed to hold power over creatures like vampires, who cast no reflection of their own. Mirrors were strategically placed in homes, their presence intended to disorient and confuse any vampire that might try to enter. Some believed that a vampire, confronted with its own lack of reflection, would be driven mad, its deception revealed. Unearthing the truth, the grisly practice of exhumation. The fear of vampires extended beyond death itself, for it was believed that the undead could spread their curse, creating new vampires from the ranks of the recently deceased. This fear, amplified by outbreaks of unexplained illnesses and deaths, often led to a gruesome practice, the exhumation of suspected vampires. Driven by panic and a desperate need to protect themselves, villagers would exhume the bodies of those who had died under suspicious circumstances, or those who, in life, had been rumoured to be involved in witchcraft or other dark practices. The exhumations were conducted with a mixture of fear and reverence, a macabre ritual performed under the cloak of darkness. The telltale signs of vampirism were varied and often based on superstition. A body that had not decomposed as expected, a reddish hue to the skin, the presence of blood around the mouth, or even the growth of new hair or nails. All of these were taken as evidence of unholy activity. The case of Peter Plogojevic's terror in Serbia. Our journey through vampire history now takes us to the early 18th century, to a small village nestled in the heart of Serbia. It was here, in 1725, that the case of Peter Plogojevic thrust the fear of vampires into the spotlight, sparking a wave of panic that would spread throughout Europe. Plogojevic, a seemingly ordinary peasant, died suddenly and unexpectedly. However, his death was just the beginning of a series of chilling events that would terrorize the village and cement his name in the annals of vampire lore. Shortly after Plogojevic was laid to rest, several villagers began to die under mysterious circumstances. The deaths were sudden, marked by strange illnesses and vivid nightmares in which the deceased claimed to have been visited by Plogojevic himself. He was said to have appeared at their bedsides, his eyes glowing with an unholy light, his touch draining the very life from their bodies. Fear and suspicion gripped the village. The villagers, desperate for answers and terrified of what might befall them next, turned to local authorities for help. What followed was a series of events that, while shocking to modern sensibilities, highlight the very real terror that the vampire myth held over people's lives. Arnold Powell, the vampire that sparked a panic. In 1726, Arnold Powell, a former soldier, died after allegedly being attacked by a vampire. Villagers soon whispered that Powell himself had become a vampire. Reports of vampire attacks began to surface, with Powell's monstrous visage prowling the streets. Cattle were found drained of blood, fueling the growing hysteria. The situation became so dire that even local authorities were forced to take action. Section 3. Mercy Brown, a New England nightmare. In 1892, the small town of Exeter, Rhode Island, faced a chilling encounter with the undead. At the center of this nightmare was a young woman named Mercy Brown. Tuberculosis had claimed the lives of Mercy's mother and sister, and now Mercy herself. Desperate, her family began to whisper about a sinister force. The idea of vampires took root in their minds. After Mercy's death, her brother Edwin fell gravely ill. Desperate to save Edwin, the townspeople decided to exhume Mercy's body. From horror to heartthrobs, the evolution of an icon. The 20th century ushered in a new era for the vampire. No longer confined to Gothic novels, these creatures began to infiltrate popular culture. As society evolved, so did its monsters, their fangs and capes taking on new meaning. The late 20th and early 21st centuries saw a dramatic shift in the portrayal of vampires. Vampires became anti-heroes, their struggles mirroring our own. Beyond fangs and capes, vampires as social commentary. Vampires became complex and relatable, serving as powerful tools for social commentary. Their otherness resonated with audiences grappling with identity and prejudice. True Blood explored themes of bigotry and the fight for acceptance, tackling racism, homophobia, and religious extremism through a supernatural lens. Vampires' association with blood and sexuality explored taboo subjects. Films like Let the Right One In explored isolation and the search for connection. A thirst for more? The enduring appeal of the vampire. From Gothic horror to brooding romance and comedic absurdity, the vampire is a versatile figure in popular culture. What is it about these creatures that continues to captivate us? Perhaps it's the allure of immortality and the escape from mortality. Vampires represent a rebellion against the natural order. They embody our deepest fears and desires. Or maybe it's the exploration of the other, the fascination with a being both familiar and alien. Whatever the reason, the vampire's grip on our imagination shows no signs of loosening. Reflections in the Dark, the vampire. A creature born of whispers, of shadows dancing in the flickering light of a dying fire. For centuries this figure has haunted our collective imagination, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks at the edges of our world and perhaps within ourselves. As we've journeyed from ancient folklore to modern interpretations, one thing remains clear. The vampire is a mirror reflecting our deepest fears and desires. In the Strigoi and Nosferatu, we see the terror of the unknown, the dread of disease and pestilence, the primal fear of death itself. Vlad the Impaler, a figure both historical and mythologized, embodies the seductive allure of power, the seductive danger of a man who walked the line between ruthlessness and madness. And in Bram Stoker's iconic Dracula, we confront our anxieties about sexuality, morality, and the fragility of civilization itself. Each generation has reshaped the vampire myth, projecting its own anxieties and fascinations onto these creatures of the night. The monstrous has given way to the seductive, the terrifying to the tragic. We've seen vampires become symbols of rebellion, of forbidden romance, of the eternal outsider seeking connection in a world that shuns the different. The eternal allure. Why do these tales resonate with such power? Vampires, forever young, forever powerful, represent a rebellion against time, a realm where death holds no dominion. They explore our darker impulses, desires we often suppress. The vampire story is far from over. It haunts our imaginations, reflecting our deepest fears and desires.